The choosing hall of Arendelle had been built to intimidate. Vela felt its weight pressing down on her as she stood among the servants at the back of the cavernous chamber, her hands clasped tight to hide their trembling. Pillars of black granite rose toward a ceiling lost in shadow, and between them, 1,000 candles burned in iron sconces, casting restless light across the faces of the most powerful wolves in the realm. She should not have come. Servants were permitted to attend the Luna selection only to pour wine and carry platters. They were meant to be invisible, forgotten. And Vela had spent the past year perfecting the art of being forgotten. But tonight, something had pulled her from the safety of the kitchens, a whisper in her blood, a tugging behind her ribs that she could not name or ignore. On the raised dais at the chamber's heart, 7 chairs had been arranged in a crescent. 6 were occupied by young women draped in silk and moonstone, their postures rigid with barely concealed tension. The 7th chair sat empty, and beside that empty chair, alone on a throne of carved obsidian, sat the AlphaKing's son, Calum. Even from this distance, Vela could see why the candidates refused to look at him. It was not his appearance. He was striking in the way of all dominant wolves, broad-shouldered and sharp-featured, with dark hair that fell across a face built from shadows and angles. No, it was not how he looked. It was how he felt. The wrongness radiated from him in waves, a discordant hum that made Vela's wolf whimper and claw at the edges of her consciousness. That sensation of peering into an abyss, of standing at the edge of something broken and vast. Nerissa of House Solvain, the ceremonial caller announced, "You may approach." The woman who rose was beautiful in the way of winter storms, pale hair cascading over shoulders draped in silver silk. She walked toward Calum's throne with measured steps, her chin held high, but Vela saw her hands. They were shaking. Nerissa stopped 3 feet from the empty chair. Protocol demanded she sit, that she place herself beside the prince and allow the bond testing to commence. Instead, she sank into a deep curtsy. "Forgive me, Your Highness. I am unwell this evening. I cannot fulfill my duty." Vela watched Calum's face for any reaction. She found nothing. His silver eyes remained fixed on some middle distance, as if Nerissa's rejection was simply weather, expected, unremarkable. One by one, the remaining candidates found their excuses. A sudden illness, a spiritual sign advising against the match. Each woman approached, curtsied, and retreated without ever taking the empty seat. High King Tiberan rose from his throne, his weathered face tight with fury. "Is there no woman in this realm with courage enough to sit beside my son?" Silence answered him. Vela's wolf stirred. "Go," it whispered. "Go to him." The thought was madness. She was an Omega, the lowest rank. Worse, she was a rejected Omega, cast aside by her intended mate before the entire Silverpine pack because her wolf was defective. She could not shift fully. She was broken. What could someone like her offer a prince? Go. The pull behind her ribs sharpened into something that burned. Vela's feet moved before her mind granted permission. She was stepping out from the servants' cluster, walking toward the dais. The crowd parted before her with confused murmurs. She heard someone whisper, "Omega," like a curse. She kept walking. The wrongness emanating from Calum intensified with every step. Her wolf should have been cowering. Instead, it pressed forward, straining toward the broken prince like a moth seeking flame. Vela climbed the dais steps. Calum's silver eyes snapped to her face, and for the first time all evening she saw something flicker in their depths. Confusion, curiosity, fear. "What are you doing?" His voice was low, rough. "You should not be here. You should not be able to—" Vela sat in the 7th chair. The world shattered. Pain exploded through her chest as something ancient and immense slammed into her consciousness. She heard herself cry out. heard Calem's answering gasp, felt his hand close around her wrist with desperate strength. And then she felt him. Not the wrongness, not the abyss. She felt a soul that had been screaming in isolation for 23 years, a wolf caged behind walls of agony, a heart so starved for connection that her presence had cracked it wide open. Mate. The word thundered through their bond like a war drum. Mate. 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 Golden light erupted from the place where his skin touched hers, blazing bright enough to blind. The crowd screamed. Somewhere, glass shattered. Vela looked into Calem's eyes and saw them flooded with color. No longer empty silver but burning amber, alive with an emotion so raw it stole her breath. You, he whispered. I can feel you. I can feel you. Impossible, someone was shouting. An Omega cannot bond with royal blood. Witchcraft, another voice snarled. She has enchanted him. Do not let go, Calem breathed. Please, whatever happens, do not let. Hands seized her shoulders and ripped her backward. The bond screamed. Vela hit the stone floor hard enough to drive the air from her lungs. Guards surrounded her. Through their legs, she could see Calem fighting to reach her, two massive wolves pinning him to his throne while he thrashed and snarled. Vela! He knew her name. She had never spoken it, but the bond had given it to him. Seize the witch, High King Tiberin commanded. She has violated the sacred rite with dark magic. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard Nerissa's voice, smooth and satisfied. I saw her lurking near the ceremonial wine earlier, Your Majesty. Who knows what poison she may have slipped into the prince's cup? Lies. All lies. But the king's face had already hardened into judgment. Take her to the eastern cells. She will be executed at dawn. Father, no! Calem's roar shook the hall. The wolves pinning him were thrown aside as something inside him unleashed, something vast and terrible and magnificent. For one heartbeat, Vela saw his wolf. Not broken, not wrong, immense. Then a blade hilt struck her temple, and darkness swallowed her whole. She woke to rough hands dragging her through a servant's corridor, her head pounding, her wrists bound. Two guards pulled her toward a door she recognized, the passage to the eastern tower, the cells, the execution block. A figure stepped from the shadows ahead. Release her. The figure moved faster than Vela's eyes could track. Two soft sounds like sighs, and both guards crumpled to the floor. Mira, the old healer who worked in the kitchens, stood over their unconscious bodies with a blade in her weathered hand. Foolish girl, Mira muttered, cutting Vela's bonds. I told you to stay hidden. I told you the selection was no place for broken things. The bond. I know what the bond did. Every wolf in the castle felt that light. Mira gripped her arm. The Solvanes have been planning this for years. They will not let you live to challenge Nerissa's claim. Calem is being drugged as we speak. By morning, he will remember nothing of tonight. Nothing of you. The words hit Vela like a physical blow. No, the bond. A true mate. Bond cannot be erased. It can be suppressed, buried. And with you dead, there will be no one to awaken it again. Mira shoved a bundle into her arms. A cloak, a pouch of coins, dried provisions. The western gate. A cart leaves for the outer villages before midnight. You will be on it. I cannot leave him. Tears streamed down Vela's face. You did not feel what I felt. He has been alone his entire life. That wrongness everyone fears. It is not corruption. It is loneliness. His wolf has been screaming for a mate, and the sound of it drove everyone away. Mira's expression softened with something that might have been grief. Then survive, child. Survive, and find a way back to him. But you cannot save anyone from inside a grave. Vela pulled the cloak around her shoulders, her hand pressed to her chest where the bond still flickered like a wounded star. Will you tell him? If he remembers anything, will you tell him I did not choose to leave? I will tell him what I can. Mira pushed her toward the stairs. Now go. Vela ran, through winding corridors and moonlit courtyards, until she reached the western gate and the waiting cart. She climbed aboard without looking back. But as the cart rolled beyond the castle walls, Vela felt something through the bond that made her heart crack. Kalum, fighting the drugs flooding his system. Kalum, screaming her name into the void between their souls. And then, silence. The bond did not break, but it went quiet, like a candle flame starved of air. Vela pressed her face into her cloak and wept. 4 months later, Vela had almost convinced herself she could survive this. The village of Brindlewood clung to the edge of the thornwood forest like a creature afraid of the dark. It was small, poor, and forgotten, which made it perfect for a woman who needed to disappear. She had arrived in the depths of winter with nothing but Mira's coins and a story about a dead husband. The villagers had accepted her readily enough when they learned she knew herbcraft. Now she was simply the widow who lived in the cottage by the mill, the quiet woman with sad eyes who delivered tonics and poultices and never spoke of her past. Vela stood at her window, watching the first green shoots of spring push through the thawing earth, one hand resting on the swell of her belly. 4 months. The child had quickened last week. A flutter at first, like the brush of moth wings, then stronger movements that took her breath away. The village midwife had commented on her size, had wondered aloud if there might be twins. She knew what grew inside her, had felt the impossible truth resonating through the bond that still lived in her chest. Kalum's child. Aang conceived in the single moment their souls had touched, when the bond had blazed between them with enough power to shake the foundations of the choosing hall. The healers would say it was impossible, that a bond unconsummated could not create life. But the bond had not cared about what was possible. Vela traced circles on her stomach, feeling an answering movement beneath her palm. "Your father does not know you exist," she murmured. "He may not even remember that I exist. But I will keep you safe. I swear it." The bond flickered. She froze. 4 months of silence. 4 months of that terrible, airless quiet that told her Kalum was lost somewhere beyond her reach. But tonight, something stirred. A pulse, faint as a heartbeat heard through water. Then another. Vela's hand flew to her chest. "Kalum?" Nothing answered. But the bond remained awake, trembling with an awareness it had not held since the night she fled. He was still in there, still fighting. The mark on her inner wrist, the place where his hand had gripped her during the bond's awakening, had never faded. It should have. Incomplete bonds were supposed to dissolve within weeks. Instead, the mark had darkened, deepened. Some mornings, she woke to find it warm, as if his fingers had just released her. Something was wrong with the suppression, or something was right. The bond pulsed again. Stronger this time, and somewhere, impossibly far away, she could have sworn she felt Kalum calling her name. The news arrived with the spring traders. Vela was kneeling in her small garden when she heard the commotion in the village square. Shouts and gasps, and the kind of urgent chatter that meant something significant had happened. A crowd had gathered around a trader's wagon. The man atop it was speaking in breathless tones. "Seen it with my own eyes, I swear it. The prince has gone feral." Vela's blood turned to ice. "Feral?" someone asked. "The AlphaKing's son?" "Aye, the cursed one. They say he broke free of whatever was holding him 2 weeks past, tore through the castle like a demon, injured a dozen guards and nearly killed his own father. Now he stalks the kingdom in wolf form and no one can bring him back. They say he is searching for something. Someone. But no one knows who." The bond in Vela's chest roared to life. Pain and longing and desperate clawing need flooded through her with such intensity that she stumbled. Kalum had broken free. The drugs, The suppression, whatever the Solvanes had done to bury the bond, he had torn through it by sheer force of will, searching for her. What of the kingdom? Another villager was asking. Chaos, the traitor said grimly. The Solvanes have declared themselves regents. Their daughter Nerissa rules in all but name. Taxes have doubled. The harvests are being seized, and any wolf who speaks against them disappears in the night. The child in her belly kicked sharply. They say there is a reward, the traitor continued. 10,000 gold pieces for information about a woman. No name, no description. Only that the prince screams for her when the moon is full. 10,000 gold. Enough to buy loyalty from anyone. Vela backed away from the crowd slowly, carefully. She needed to think. Needed to plan. Needed to... She stopped. At the edge of the village where the road emerged from the forest, 3 figures stood watching. They wore traveling cloaks with hoods drawn low, but Vela could see the glint of weapons at their hips. And they were looking directly at her. The bond in her chest screamed a warning. Run. But before she could move, the lead figure pushed back his hood, and Vela found herself staring into a face she recognized. Cormac, first beta of Arendelle, the man who had served beside Calum since childhood. His amber eyes met hers across the village square, and in them, she saw something that made her heart stop. Recognition, hope, and fear. Widow Wren. His voice carried just far enough for her to hear. We need to talk. Quickly. Before the Solvane hunters reach this village. Vela led Cormac to her cottage, her mind racing with every step. Once inside, Cormac's eyes swept her small home before settling on her swollen belly. Something flickered across his weathered face. Shock. Then understanding. The bond, he said quietly. It truly took hold. You knew what happened that night, and you let them drag me to the cells? I knew nothing until it was too late. Cormac raised his hands. The Solvanes moved faster than anyone anticipated. By the time I reached the hall, you were gone, and Calum was what? Screaming. Fighting. It took 8 wolves to hold him down long enough for their healers to administer the serum. Cormac's amber eyes were haunted. I have served beside him since we were boys. I have never heard a sound like that. They told the kingdom you were a witch, Cormac continued, that you had ensnared the prince with dark magic. The Solvanes had been whispering in the king's ear for years, convincing him that Calum's condition made him unfit to rule, that Nerissa would steady him. His condition. Vela's voice was bitter. You mean the loneliness that everyone mistook for corruption? Cormac went still. You felt it. What he truly is. I felt everything. His wolf is not broken, Cormac. It is vast, immense. The wrongness that drives people away. It is the sound of a soul crying out for connection so loudly that weaker wolves cannot bear it. And you could bear it. I did not just bear it. Vela met his gaze. I answered it. The serum should have worked, Cormac finally said. But Calum fought it. Every day, every hour, clawing at the walls they built inside his mind. 2 weeks ago, the bond itself began fighting back. Your connection refused to be erased. Vela thought of the mark on her wrist, the warmth she woke to some mornings. He broke free during a council meeting, shifted without warning and attacked Lord Sylvain directly. Cormac stepped closer. He is coming here, Vela. The bond is guiding him like a beacon. Her heart stuttered. How long? Days. Perhaps hours. But the Solvanes have sent hunters. Wolves loyal to Nerissa, commanded to find you before Calum does. Find me and do what? Cormac's expression answered before his words did. If you die, the bond dies with you. Calum's wolf will have nothing left to search for. They believe the grief will destroy him completely. His hand closed around her arm. They do not know about the child, but if they discover it, a royal heir. Proof the bond was real. a threat to everything the Solvanes had built. "How close are the hunters?" Vela whispered. The cottage door exploded inward. Splinters of wood rained across the room as 3 wolves in human form stormed through the ruined doorway. Cormac moved with blinding speed, placing himself between Vela and the attackers. Steel sang as he drew his blade. "Run!" he roared. "The back window, go!" But the lead hunter had already spotted her belly, his eyes widening with vicious delight. "Well, well, the witch carries a bastard. Lady Nerissa will want to hear about this." "Lady Nerissa will hear nothing from corpses," Cormac snarled. He lunged. The cottage became chaos. The crash of bodies against furniture, the grunt of impact, the wet sound of blade meeting flesh. Cormac fought with brutal efficiency, but he was outnumbered. Glass shattered behind her. She spun to see Cormac pinned against the wall, a hunter's blade pressed to his throat, while the other 2 advanced toward her. "The beta dies if you run," the lead hunter said calmly. "Cooperate, and we might let him live long enough to watch you burn." Vela's wolf stirred inside her, that broken, defective creature that had never been strong enough to shift fully. But something else stirred too. The child. Power rippled through her belly, foreign and familiar all at once. It felt like Calum, that immense, aching vastness, but younger, rawer, untamed. "Stay back," Vela heard herself say. Her voice carried harmonics that did not belong to her. The hunters hesitated. Golden light sparked at her fingertips. "What?" The lead hunter's confidence cracked. "What is she doing?" Vela did not know. The power was not hers to control. It belonged to the child, to the bond, to something ancient that had been woken by the selection and refused to sleep again. She raised her hands. Light erupted from her palms, slamming into the nearest hunter with enough force to throw him through the cottage wall. The second hunter shifted mid-leap, his wolf form lunging for her throat, and was caught in mid-air by jaws that materialized from the shadows. A wolf the color of midnight burst into the cottage. He was enormous, larger than any wolf Vela had ever seen, his shoulders nearly reaching her chest, his eyes blazing with silver fire that held no trace of emptiness. The hunter in his jaws did not even have time to scream. Calum dropped the body and turned to face the remaining attackers. The lead hunter ran. He made it 3 steps before Calum caught him. When silence finally fell, the massive wolf stood inches away. Blood matted his dark fur. His sides heaved with exertion. But his eyes were fixed on her face with an intensity that stopped her heart. "Mate." The word echoed through the bond, raw and desperate and wondering. "Found you. Finally found you." Vela could not speak. 4 months of grief, of hiding, and now Calum stood before her, his wolf form trembling with exhaustion and emotion. "Calum," she finally whispered. A shudder ran through his massive body. The shift began, fur receding, bones reshaping, until a man knelt in the wreckage of her cottage. He was thinner than she remembered. Scars she did not recognize marked his arms and chest, evidence of the battles he had fought to reach her. But he was here. "I thought I dreamed you." His voice cracked. "They told me you were not real, that my broken mind had invented a mate to ease its suffering." His hand reached toward her face, stopping inches from her cheek. "But I remembered your eyes. I remembered." His gaze dropped to her belly. He went utterly still. "Vela." Her name was a prayer on his lips. Are you?" She took his hovering hand and pressed it to the swell where his child grew. The baby kicked. A sound escaped Calum, half laugh, half sob. He fell forward, his forehead pressing against her stomach, his shoulders shaking. "They told me the bond was false. I believed them for so long. I let them poison my mind because the alternative, that my true mate had been stolen from me, was too painful to bear." Vela's fingers threaded through his tangled hair. I did not leave by choice. They would have killed me. I know. He looked up at her, tears streaming down his face. I know everything now. When the serum finally broke, the memories returned. I saw what they did to you. Calum. First, I need to know. He rose to his feet, cupping her face in trembling hands. The bond that night, what you felt when you sat beside me, was it real? Or did I somehow force it onto you? Vela silenced him with a kiss. The bond ignited between them, that river of golden light that had first blazed in the choosing hall. She felt his shock, his desperate hope, his overwhelming love flooding through the connection. Real, she told him through the bond. It was always real. I will always choose you. When they finally broke apart, Calum was weeping openly. My mate, he breathed. My perfect, brave, impossible mate. Behind them, Cormac cleared his throat. Forgive the interruption. The beta's voice was strained, blood seeping through his fingers where he pressed his side. But those hunters were only the advance party. The main force is less than an hour behind. Calum's arms tightened around Vela. Then we move. Now. I have allies gathering in the northern territories. We make for the Ashwood stronghold. Will you come with me? He asked quietly. I will not force you. I already told you. Vela took his hand, lacing their fingers together. I choose you. Whatever comes, we stand together. The smile that broke across Calum's face was like sunrise after endless night. They traveled through the night, moving deeper into the wild forests that bordered Arendel's northern territories. Cormac rode ahead, scouting the path. Calum had found a horse from a sympathetic farmer, and Vela rode before him, cradled against his chest. His hands rested on the curve of her belly as if he could not bear to stop touching the proof of what grew within her. I need to tell you something, he said quietly, about what happened after you left. Cormac told me some of it. Cormac does not know everything. His arms tensed around her. The serum they gave me, it did not simply suppress the bond. It created a false version of myself that could smile and nod and agree to whatever the Solvanes demanded. Calum. They paraded me before the court like a puppet, made me sign documents granting Nerissa authority, made me stand beside her at ceremonies. His voice roughened with self-loathing. I watched it happen from somewhere deep inside my own mind, screaming, unable to break free. Vela turned in the saddle to face him. That was not you, she said firmly. Whatever your body did under their control, that was not you. I should have been stronger. If I had broken free sooner, you would not have spent 4 months alone, carrying our child in hiding, believing I had thrown you away. Vela cupped his face in her hands. Listen to me. I sat beside you that night because something in my soul recognized something in yours. Not the prince. Not the power. You. The man who had been screaming into the void for 23 years, waiting for someone brave enough to answer. Tears slipped down his cheeks, but he did not look away. We are not broken, Calum. We are simply different, and our differences found each other. He kissed her then, deeply, desperately. The bond blazed between them, golden threads weaving tighter with each heartbeat. When they parted, his forehead pressed to hers. I love you, he whispered. I loved you before I knew your name. I will love you until the stars themselves burn out. I love you too. I never stopped. But as dawn broke over the forest canopy, Cormac came galloping back with fear etched across his face. The Ashwood stronghold, he gasped. The Solvanes reached it first. Calum went rigid. That is impossible. The Northern Lords are loyal. Lord Ashwood's daughter was taken hostage 3 days ago. He had no choice but to open his gates. Cormac's voice was heavy with dread. Nerissa herself leads the force. She has declared that any wolf who shelters you will see their families executed. How many hostages? 47. Mostly women and children. 47 innocents, held as leverage against a prince who would burn the world to protect his mate. She wants me to surrender, Calum said flatly. She wants you dead. But she knows you will not walk willingly into a trap. There is no other way, Vela said quietly. Not one that does not end with innocent blood. Calum spun her to face him. Do not even think it. 47 people, Calum. Children. I will not hide while others pay the price. That is not who I am. That is not who you fell in love with. His jaw clenched. His wolf howled through the bond, desperate and terrified. But beneath the fear, she felt something else. Pride. He knew she was right. The Ashwood stronghold rose from the forest like a wound in the earth. Stone walls that had stood for centuries now flew Sylvain banners. Even from the tree line where they hid, Vela could see the armed wolves patrolling the battlements. Nerissa has positioned archers along the towers, Cormac reported. At least 60 wolves guard the courtyard. The hostages are being held in the Great Hall. She is expecting an assault, Calum muttered. She is not expecting me. Both men turned to stare at Vela. Nerissa believes I am weak, a defective wolf who could not even shift properly. Let me give her what she expects, a frightened woman who has come to beg for mercy. Absolutely not. Calum's voice was iron. She will let me inside. She will want to gloat. And while she is distracted, your wolves can breach the northern wall. And if she simply executes you? She will not. She needs to defeat me publicly. Nerissa's entire power rests on the lie that I enchanted you. She cannot simply kill me in shadows. She needs witnesses. Through the bond, she felt his wolf raging against the plan, but she also felt his mind working, recognizing the truth she offered. 1 hour, he said finally. If you are not safe by then, I am coming through those gates regardless of cost. That is all I need. He pulled her into a crushing embrace. If she harms you, he whispered, I will end her so slowly that the screams will echo for generations. I love you. I love you too. Both of you. His hand found her belly one last time. Come back to me. She walked toward the gates before her courage could falter. The guards spotted her immediately, a lone pregnant woman emerging from the forest with her hands raised. Shouts echoed along the walls, but no arrows flew. Nerissa wanted her alive. The gates groaned open, and Vela stepped into the stronghold. Wolves surrounded her instantly, rough hands shoving her through the courtyard. The great hall doors swung wide, and there, seated on Lord Ashwood's stolen throne, draped in silver silk and cold triumph, sat Nerissa Sylvain. Well, well. Nerissa's voice dripped with poisoned honey. The witch finally crawls from her hole. Vela's eyes swept the hall, counting guards, locating exits, finding the huddled mass of hostages against the far wall. Among them, she spotted a face she recognized. Orin, one of Calum's childhood tutors who had been kind to her at the castle. He had been captured then, brought here as leverage. Their eyes met for a single heartbeat. Trust me, Vela tried to convey. Help is coming. Nerissa rose from the throne. I must admit I am impressed you survived this long. A broken Omega, heavy with a bastard child. She stopped inches from Vela's face. Tell me, did you actually believe Calum would come for you? He came. Fear flickered in Nerissa's pale eyes, quickly smothered. And yet you are here alone. Which means he sent you as a sacrifice. I came by choice. Because you are too stupid to understand that you have already lost. The kingdom believes Calum is feral, beyond saving. His father has signed documents naming me regent. Her smile sharpened. A cure that will never come, of course, not once you and that abomination in your belly are dead. Her hand shot out, gripping Vela's jaw with bruising force. But first, you will confess. Before all these witnesses, you will admit that you used dark magic to seduce the prince. Then I will execute you as the traitor you are. No? The slap cracked across her face hard enough to split her lip. Confess, or I will start killing hostages one by one until you break. She gestured to her guards. 2 wolves dragged Orin forward. Let us begin with the old tutor. Nerissa drew a silver dagger from her belt. I wonder how long he will scream. Vela's heart stopped. Calum, she called through the bond. Now. It has to be now. But even as she reached for him, she felt something else stirring. The child. The power that had erupted in her cottage. Raw and vast and ancient. It was building again. And this time, it would not be contained. Wait. Vela's voice rang through the hall with harmonics that did not belong to her. Nerissa paused, the dagger inches from Orin's throat. Confusion crossed her expression, then unease. What trick is this? No trick. Vela stepped forward, and the guards who moved to stop her stumbled backward. You wanted a confession, Nerissa. I will give you truth instead. Warmth spread through her hands, building toward brilliance. The bond between Calum and me is not dark magic, Vela continued. It is the truest thing in this kingdom. Your family spent years poisoning his mind, convincing everyone that his wolf was broken. But his wolf was never broken. The light spread up her arms, pulsing with each word. He was waiting. For someone brave enough to sit beside him. Vela raised her chin. I am that mate, and the child I carry is his heir. The true heir of Arendelle. Lies! Nerissa's composure shattered. Guards! Kill her now! The wolves lunged, and the northern wall exploded inward. Stone and mortar cascaded into the hall as Calum's forces poured through the breach. Cormac led the charge, his blade singing through the chaos. But Vela barely noticed. The power inside her had reached a crescendo, and her body was no longer her own. Pain lanced through her limbs as bones began to crack and reform. She fell to her knees, gasping as fur erupted along her skin in patches of silver and gold. No, she whispered. Not now. The baby. Trust us, a voice said inside her mind. Not Calum's voice. Younger. Wilder. We will not let you fall, Mother. Shift. Shift. The child's power merged with her own, and suddenly the transformation that had always been incomplete flowed through her like water finding its true course. Vela threw back her head and howled. When she opened her eyes, she saw the world from a new height. 4 legs, silver gold fur that shimmered with inner light, a body that thrummed with strength she had never imagined possible. She was whole. Across the hall, Nerissa stared in horror. Impossible. You were defective. You could not. Vela's wolf lunged, her jaws closed around Nerissa's wrist, forcing her to drop the dagger. The taste of Solvain blood filled her mouth. Nerissa screamed and shifted. Her wolf was large, trained for combat. But it was nothing compared to what Vela had become. They clashed in the center of the hall. Nerissa fought with desperate fury, but Vela fought with something stronger. 4 months of hiding. 4 months of protecting her child alone, while this woman tried to destroy everything she loved. Vela's jaws found Nerissa's throat. She could end it. 1 bite, and the woman who had caused so much suffering would be gone. Do it, her wolf urged. Justice. Vengeance. End her. But through the chaos, she felt the child, warm and steady, in her belly, somehow untouched by the transformation. Mercy, the young voice whispered. Not for her. For yourself. For who you want to be. Vela released Nerissa's throat. The woman collapsed, whimpering, blood pooling beneath her ruined neck. Not a killing blow. But she would never speak clearly again. Never command wolves with that honeyed, poisonous voice, a fitting punishment for a woman who had built her power on lies. Through the chaos, A massive black wolf shouldered toward her. Kalum. He shifted as he reached her, falling to his knees and pulling her wolf form against his chest. You shifted, he gasped. Vela, you shifted. She let the change take her back to human, collapsing into his arms. The baby helped. I think they spoke to me. Calum's eyes widened. He pressed his hand to her belly. I feel them, he breathed. Both of them. Vela, there are two twins. She laughed through her tears. I suspected. He kissed her then, in the middle of the blood-soaked hall. His hands cradled her face like she was something precious beyond measure. It is over, he whispered. But Vela shook her head. Not yet. The bond is still incomplete. She met his silver eyes. Claim me, Kalum, properly. Let them all see that I am yours and you are mine. Around them, wolves were gathering, watching, waiting. Here? He asked. Now? Here, now, before witnesses so no one can ever question it again. Kalum's wolf rose in his eyes, silver blazing to gold. Then bare your throat to me, my love. Vela tilted her head back. His teeth sank into the junction of her neck and shoulder. The bond completed with a surge of golden light that illuminated every corner of the hall. Vela felt their souls merge completely. Every memory, every emotion laid bare. She saw herself through his eyes. Not broken, never broken. Beautiful and fierce and his. And he saw himself through hers. Not cursed, not wrong. A wolf whose soul had simply been too vast for anyone but her to hold. When he released her, a perfect mark remained on her skin. Vela reached up and pulled his mouth to her throat once more. Now me, she said. I claim you too. Her teeth found his flesh, and the bond sang. In the weeks that followed, Arundel transformed. Lord Solvane was executed for high treason, his confession extracted after evidence of the selection night drugging was discovered in Nerissa's private chambers. The remaining Solvanes were stripped of titles and lands, scattered to the winds as packless wolves, the worst fate their kind could imagine. Nerissa herself was confined to a remote tower, her ruined throat a permanent reminder of her crimes. Some called for her death, but Kalum had deferred to Vela's judgment. Let her live, Vela had said. Let her spend decades watching the kingdom thrive under the wolves she tried to destroy. Let her hear the howls of celebration every time our children reach a milestone she tried to prevent. That is a crueler punishment than any blade. High King Tiberin, confronted with undeniable proof of the Solvane's treachery, had prostrated himself before his son and begged forgiveness. The old king had wept as he confessed his blindness, his willingness to believe lies about his own son rather than confront the truth of Kalum's loneliness. Kalum had granted forgiveness, not for his father's sake, but because the kingdom needed stability, and because Vela had whispered through their bond that holding on to hatred would only poison their future. The old king formally recognized Vela as crown princess and true Luna of Arundel. The announcement had been met with cheers that shook the castle walls. Now summer had painted the palace gardens in shades of green and gold, and Vela stood at the window of the royal chambers, one hand pressed to her enormous belly. The kingdom that had once whispered witch when she passed now called her name with reverence and hope. They are restless tonight, she murmured, arms wrapped around her from behind. They know their time is near. Kalum pressed a kiss to her hair. The healers say any day now. Are you frightened? Terrified. He laughed softly. I have faced assassins and traitors and my own feral wolf. None of it compares to the fear of becoming a father. Vela turned in his arms. You will be wonderful. You cannot know that. I know you. She cupped his face. That man will be an extraordinary father. A sharp pain lanced through her belly. She gasped, gripping Kalum's arms as a second wave followed. The babies. They are coming. The next hours blurred into pain and pressure, and Kalum's hand gripping hers. The healers had wanted him to wait outside. I will not leave her, he had snarled, and no one had dared argue. When the first cry split the air, high and strong and impossibly beautiful, they both wept. A boy? The healer announced. Dark hair, silver eyes that would later turn to amber. The second came minutes later. A girl. Smaller than her brother, but her cry was fiercer. Her eyes held flecks of gold amid the silver. Calum gathered all three of them into his arms and buried his face in Vela's hair. Thank you, he breathed. For sitting beside me. For choosing me when no one else would. For giving me a family I never dared dream I could have. I would choose you again, she whispered. In every life. In every world. I would always find my way to that empty chair. The coronation took place on the autumn equinox, when the light and dark held perfect balance, a fitting symbol for a king and queen who had found harmony through chaos. Vela stood beside Calum on the great dais of the choosing hall. The same hall where their bond had first ignited, where she had walked toward the wolf everyone feared and changed both their destinies forever. The pillars of black granite still rose toward shadows, but now they were draped in banners of silver and gold. The candles still burned in iron sconces, but their light felt warm rather than menacing. The high priestess lowered twin crowns onto their heads, matching circlets of woven silver set with moonstones that caught the light like captured stars. By the blessing of the moon and the witness of the pack, I crown you Calum, Alpha King of Arendelle, and Vela, LunaQueen. May your bond light the way for generations to come. Cheers erupted, not the polite applause of nobles performing obligation, but the full-throated roar of wolves who had witnessed miracles and believed in love again. And in the front row, held in the arms of their nursemaids, two infants watched with wide, knowing eyes. They had been born under a summer moon, and already the kingdom whispered that they carried the ancient magic of a true mate bond in their blood. Aldrich and Sarah, the twin heirs of Arendelle, the children who had spoken to their mother from the womb and helped her become whole. Calum took Vela's hand and raised it high. Today marks the beginning of a new age, he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. An age built not on fear and manipulation, but on the sacred truth of the mate bond. My Luna was rejected by those who could not see her worth. I was shunned by those who could not understand my wolf. Together, we found each other. He turned to face her, and his silver eyes blazed with love. Let it be known throughout the realm, there is no wolf too broken to be worthy. There is no soul too wounded to find its match. The bond does not care about bloodlines or status. It sees only truth. Vela stepped forward to address the crowd. I was an Omega, she said. The lowest rank, the weakest wolf. I was told I was defective because I could not shift. I was rejected by a mate who saw only my flaws. She straightened her spine, standing tall in her crown. But I learned that strength is not measured in the form we take. It is measured in the choices we make. The courage to sit beside someone the world fears. The faith to trust a bond that should have been impossible. She found Cormac's eyes in the crowd, the beta who had risked everything to bring her home. To every wolf who has been cast aside, overlooked, told they are not enough, hear me. Your worth is not determined by those who lack the vision to see it. Your mate is out there, waiting. And when you find them, you will understand that every wound, every rejection, every moment of pain was simply the path leading you home. The hall erupted. Not just cheers this time, but howls. Dozens of wolves lifting their voices in a chorus of celebration and hope, a sound that echoed off the ancient stones and carried out into the night. Calum pulled her close and kissed her before the entire kingdom. Through the bond, she felt his joy, his pride, his infinite, boundless love. We did it, he whispered into her mind. We did, she agreed. Together. always, together. That night, after the feasting and the dancing and the endless well-wishes, Vela stood on the balcony of the royal chambers with her children in her arms. The moon hung full and silver above the kingdom that was now hers to protect. Calum joined her, wrapping his arms around all three of them. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I am thinking about empty chairs, about the courage it takes to fill them, about a broken Omega who walked toward the wolf everyone feared and found the love of her life waiting." "I would have waited forever," he murmured. "My soul knew you were coming. And mine knew you were calling." Below them, the wolves of Arendelle lifted their voices in a midnight howl, a song of joy, of unity, of a kingdom reborn. And in the arms of their parents, two tiny wolves stirred in their sleep, dreaming of the adventures yet to come. The story of the broken Omega and the cursed prince had reached its happy ending. But for their children, for their kingdom, for all the wolves who had learned that love conquers even the deepest wounds, the story was only beginning. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story.